instinct guide him until he found himself standing before a modest storefront with a sign that read Fomai. As he reached for the door handle, Keanu felt a sense of anticipation he hadn't experienced in a long time. Little did he know that this simple act of seeking authenticity would lead him to a family in need and an opportunity to make a real difference. The memory faded, bringing Keanu back to the present moment in the restaurant. The weight of the family's struggle settled on his shoulders, and he knew that his journey here had been about much more than finding a good meal. It was about rediscovering the power of human connection and the responsibility we have to help one another when we can. Keanu motioned to Lisa when she passed by his table again. "Would your mother have a moment to talk?" he asked gently. "I'd love to compliment her on the pho." Lisa hesitated, then disappeared into the kitchen. A few moments later, an exhausted-looking woman emerged, wiping her hands on her apron. Her face bore the subtle marks of recent grief, but her eyes held a fierce determination. "Miss Mai?" Keanu stood, extending his hand. "I'm Keanu. Your children have been wonderful hosts." "Please, sit," she gestured, sinking into the chair across from him. "I'm Kim. I'm sorry we couldn't offer you more choices today." "The pho is perfect," he assured her. "Your husband's recipe?" Kim's eyes clouded. "Yes, Tuan. He passed away recently." "I'm so sorry," Keanu said softly. "Recently?" 6 months ago," Kim admitted. "Cancer." Keanu nodded sympathetically. "And you're keeping the restaurant going?" "We're trying," Kim said, her voice wavering slightly. "It's challenging." "The restaurant seems quiet today," Keanu observed. "We've had to cut back," Kim admitted. "On everything." Keanu nodded slowly, pieces falling into place in his mind. This wasn't just about saving a restaurant, it was about preserving a community cornerstone, about helping children stay in school, about honoring a man's legacy. As he looked at the family before him, the widow fighting exhaustion, the teenagers torn between duty and dreams, the spirit of a father living on in every bowl of pho, Keanu knew exactly what needed to be done. He sat quietly for a moment, processing everything he had heard. The Mai family's story resonated deeply with him, stirring memories of his own past. "You know," he began softly, "my mother was an immigrant too. She came to Canada with big dreams and not much else." He paused, meeting Kim's eyes. "I understand the struggle, the sacrifice." Kim nodded, a flicker of recognition passing between them. "And my sister," Keanu continued, his voice low, "she battled leukemia. I know how medical bills can devastate a family." Tommy and Lisa exchanged glances, surprise evident on their faces. The weight of shared understanding hung in the air after Keanu's personal revelations. No one moved, as if the moment itself was too delicate to disturb. It was the gentle chime of the door that broke the spell. A man entered, slight build, graying at the temples, wearing a well-loved business suit. His face brightened upon seeing Kim, a regular's familiar smile crossing his features. "Mr. Chen," Kim said warmly, moving to greet him. They spoke in hushed tones, and Keanu watched as the hope in Mr. Chen's eyes gradually faded. He nodded understanding, squeezed Kim's hand briefly, and turned to leave. The door's chime seemed softer now, almost apologetic. "May I ask what happened?" Keanu's voice was gentle, curious rather than intrusive. Kim returned to the table, absently smoothing her apron. "Mr. Chen, he comes every Thursday for our caramelized pork. It was his father's favorite too, before he passed." She paused, swallowing hard. "But we had to simplify the menu. The ingredients, the preparation time." "Some dishes require special cuts," Tommy added, his young voice carrying the weight of someone much older. "We can't afford to stock everything anymore." Keanu sat with this information, letting it settle. When he spoke again, his words were measured, thoughtful. "May I ask something? With what you have in the kitchen right now, your current ingredients, your staff, what could you earn today?" Kim glanced toward the kitchen. She calculated silently, her lips moving slightly. "Maybe $400, she finally said, almost apologetically. "On a good day." Without ceremony, Keanu reached for his wallet. The leather was soft, well worn. He counted out $400, laying each bill carefully on the table. The family watched, barely breathing. The money sat there, green against white tablecloth, both promise and lifeline. Kim's hand trembled as she reached for it, then pulled back uncertain. "Please," Keanu said softly, "consider it a thank you for this amazing pho." After Kim carefully accepted the money, gratitude shining in her eyes, she thanked Keanu profusely. I don't know what to say. This means so much to us." She excused herself, disappearing into the kitchen. A few moments later, Tommy and Lisa emerged, their faces a mixture of shyness and excitement. "Thank you, Mr. Reeves," Tommy said, his voice steady despite his obvious emotion. Lisa, less restrained, blurted out, "You're our hero." Keanu felt a warmth spread through his chest, touched by their sincerity. Yet, as the children returned to the kitchen, he couldn't shake the feeling that he wanted to do more. His gaze followed them, and that's when he noticed the tip jar on the counter, a simple glass container with a handwritten thank you note taped to its side. An idea struck him. No one could have expected what he did next. Glancing around to ensure he was alone, Keanu reached for his checkbook, silently grateful he had brought it along. With quick, decisive strokes, he wrote out a check for $5,000. He folded it carefully and, with a discreet movement, slipped it into the jar. Just as he closed the lid, he heard footsteps approaching from the kitchen. Hurriedly, he stepped away from the counter, trying to appear casual. Kim emerged, wiping her hands on her apron. "Are you leaving, Mr. Reeves?" He nodded. "Yes, I should be going." "Oh, please wait," Kim said, turning toward the kitchen. "Kids, come say goodbye to Mr. Reeves." Tommy and Lisa reappeared, offering heartfelt thanks once more. Kim walked Keanu to the door, her gratitude evident in every step. As he stood in the driveway, bathed in the warm afternoon light, Keanu turned back. "Oh, I almost forgot," he said, his voice casual but his eyes twinkling. "I left a small tip in the jar. I hope that's all right." With that, he stepped out into the lengthening shadows of the street, leaving the Mai family unaware of the life-changing surprise waiting in their humble tip jar. Kim watched Keanu's retreating figure through the window, his words about the small tip echoing in her mind. Something in his tone made her curious. She moved toward the tip jar, her steps measured, almost hesitant. With slightly trembling hands, she lifted the glass container's lid. There, folded neatly among the few dollar bills, was a slip of paper that hadn't been there before. Her fingers shook as she carefully extracted it, unfolding the crisp paper with growing anticipation. When she saw the number, her knees nearly buckled. $5,000! The figure seemed to swim before her eyes. One hand flew to her mouth, stifling a gasp that was part sob, part disbelieving laugh. "Tommy! Lisa!" she called out, her voice breaking as she rushed toward the kitchen, the check clutched to her chest like a precious thing. She burst through the swinging doors, startling her children who were preparing for the dinner service. "Mom?" Tommy asked, alarm crossing his face at her expression. Unable to speak, Kim held out the check with shaking hands. The siblings crowded around, their eyes widening in unison as they registered the amount. Lisa burst into tears first, throwing her arms around her mother. Tommy stood frozen, his hand covering his mouth in a gesture that mirrored his mother's earlier reaction. Then, as if a dam had broken, they were all embracing, crying, and laughing at once. Through the kitchen window, the setting sun painted the sky in brilliant oranges and pinks, as if nature itself was celebrating with them. The Mai family held each other tight, feeling for the first time in years that tomorrow might hold more promise than yesterday. In their humble restaurant, surrounded by the familiar sense of home and family, they had received not just financial aid, but something far more precious: hope. Outside, the street had grown quiet as evening approached. The restaurant sign glowed steadily in the gathering dusk, its light seeming to shine just a little brighter, as if it too knew that the Mai family restaurant was about to enter a new chapter in its story. As we go about our daily lives, how many opportunities do we have to make a difference in someone else's world? What small acts of kindness might ripple out in ways we can't even imagine? Share your thoughts in the comments below. If you've enjoyed this story and want to hear more tales of unexpected kindness and life-changing encounters, don't forget to subscribe to our channel.